Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Avani Abha, and I am a research intern at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. I extend a warm welcome to all to today's ICS Wednesday seminar titled Tibet, China's Renewable Energy Ace. This seminar examines the rapid emergence of the Tibet Autonomous Region as China's high altitude power hub. It focuses on the large scale development of solar, hydropower, and ultra high voltage transmission networks that channel electricity from the plateau to coastal industries. The discussion highlights how advances in storage, grid integration, and all weather operations are overcoming earlier constraints, enabling long term energy expansion that supports both local growth as well as Beijing's carbon 2060 carbon neutrality goal. The seminar concludes with implications for India, highlighting likely pressure points along the Himalayas and the critical questions that now demand our attention. The speaker for today's seminar is Dr. Nityanandam. He is the professor and head of the Geospatial Research Program at the Takshashila Institution. He is the lead author of the Takshashila Geospatial Bulletin and has established geospatial programs at leading Indian universities and collaborates with globally recognized institutions. His research interests include advanced remote sensing, image processing, GIS analytics, and geospatial policy. The chair for today's seminar is Dr. Atul Bharadwaj. He is a visiting fellow in the Department of International Politics at the City St. George's University of London. He is the author of India America Relations 1942 to 1962, rooted in the liberal international order. He has been writing a strategic affairs column in the Economic and Political Weekly since 2013. He is alumnus of the National Defense Academy Pune and has served in the aviation branch of the Indian Navy for 2 decades. He was formerly also a research fellow at the Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis and was the founding editor of two defense magazines, Purple Beret and Salute. Now, before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all participants to follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the seminar. Questions may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Bharadwaj. Thank you.
Thank you, Avni. Thank you, Snigdha, and thank you, ICS. Welcome all to this another edition of ICS Wednesday seminar. It's ICS's signature seminars, I would say. And today we are delighted to have Professor Nityanandam because we're going to have a very different perspective. We all here are aware of Tibet. We keep discussing Tibet from geopolitical perspectives. We discussed the upper riparian, lower riparian problems related to Tibet, waters coming from Tibet, the Brahmaputra, and but today, so from various social science angles. Today we have a physicist with us who's going to give us very different actual evidence based on geospatial evidence, and his research is based primarily on that. So I'm actually looking forward to listening to this, and I'm sure it's going to be a learning experience for all of us. And in our research later, we should actually consider such evidences, and whatever arguments that we are making, we must use arguments from this particular aspect also, which remains generally, we remain unaware of these things, and we must engage more with such research which is happening in science and which gives us more a different perspective, a better perspective, I would say. So I won't take much time. I would hand over to Professor Nityanandam, and I'm sure it's going to be a delight listening to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Atilji. Thank you, Avni and ICS, for this opportunity. I'll start my presentation and I'll take it from there.
Professor, you're on mute.
Nitin,
Am I audible now?
Yes,
yes,
you're audible.
Perfect. So now it is on full screen, right? Yes. Perfect. So sorry for the small glitch. So I would be talking about the renewable energy developments happening in Tibet Autonomous Region, and this is largely the data sets I have used here is based out of my geospatial bulletin uh, in what do you call a research based or research driven output which we put out regularly, and I'm going to cover these things, though it is of 30 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes of discussion. I'm going to touch upon what is the current status of China's renewable energy push, and to bit about geography, physical geography of Tibet Autonomous Region, because what we generally see from, let's say, satellite data sets, even that is in two dimension, and when we look at from three dimension perspective, that gives a different picture. So I'm going to present few things and why Tibet is important, how it gains more access to renewable energy and all. And thereafter, I'll take you through few statistics of what is there in Tibet Autonomous Region, what is estimated and what is being harvested at this moment, and what are China's plans to tap further. And then I'll take you through some of interesting maps and satellite images which explains how solar energy is being tapped at this moment, its spatial distribution, its importance, and certain things that in literature people called it as a major challenge in harvesting solar energy from this area, how China has overcome those, and how it is being being deployed, a lot of interesting massive projects in different parts of Tibet Autonomous Region and all. And thereafter, I'll touch upon a bit on our Medong project. That's a mega plan of harvesting hydro energy. But it is from a geospatial perspective. What are why it is abundant, and theoretically we know why it is abundant. But I'll take you through some of the maps and analysis on the current scenario and how it can be leveraged. And thereafter, I will move on to a couple of quick slides on the geothermal and wind, and then I will put out some facts related to India and what we can do in certain cases and what we should take it forward, um, given a good example that we can see it on our neighborhood. The first one is on China's renewable energy push. So for a very first time, it is the renewable energy installed capacity in China has reached over close to 1966 gigawatt, which is 53.9% of country's total installed power capacity. These information are available in open domain. But what more important in this slide is it has first time crossed the other source of energy, especially the thermal power, which is 1451, and right now solar and wind together contributes to 1482 gigawatts for them. So which was targeted in 2020, and then what we can see today in 2024 onwards, the target has achieved, but it was originally targeted for 2030. They could able to do it much before the time. And when it comes to the total renewable energy capacity, China accounts for 44% of global renewable energy capacity and has 73% of utility scale renewable projects that we could see. Whatever renewable aspect that you pick up, China holds a major share in the global sphere. So then, what happened to the nuclear reactors and the nuclear form of energy? That still contributes to 4.5% of their total electricity generation. And there's a decline also because there are more reactors are coming up. At the same time, the total production is also going down. Probably they are moving their arsenals towards the renewable energy. Why it is there? Because China has an ambitious target to reach, uh, carbon net neutrality by 2060, and which means they are going to use more of renewable energy sources other than the coal and nuclear reactors. But they slowly try to minimize it usages and then trying to increase the productivity of this renewable energy tapping. Now, what is there in Tibet, or what is Tibet, role in contributing to whole of renewable energy ambition of China? For a surprise, it contributes currently less than 0.5% of China's total renewable energy capacity. I'll show you with a map in subsequent slide. It tells you how many existing bigger plants there in different parts of China. But nevertheless, the kind of renewable energy being extracted from Tibet Autonomous Region can power something like Netherlands and Austria. This is somewhere similar to what is being used in Netherlands and Austria. So the total requirement, total current usage is 1966 gigawatts of renewable capacity for entire China, but it's only 0.5% is being tapped from Tibet Autonomous Region. But this is in a very early stage. Right now, we call this as a early acceleration phase. In subsequent phases, let's say 2025 to 30 is very much important. That is why we have been suggesting like we should keep an eye on what is happening there in next 5 years, and thereafter in subsequent phases how they are planning to extract more energy and achieve and to support their overarching goal of getting 2060 net neutrality. Tibet do contributes, to a greater extent. The renewable energy in Tibet contributes to a greater extent. The reason for that, when I show that map in subsequent slide, you will see all the other projects are closely packed, but the developments are also around that. Whereas in case of Tibet Autonomous Region, the things are sparse and the development and habitation is also sparse. So they are trying to fill this gap, but the challenges do exist in terms of geography and the current infrastructures. The infrastructure also improved over a period of time that we are all aware. So at present, in Tibet Autonomous Region, hydropower and solar are two competitive renewable energy sources, and hydropower contributes to the maximum, and solar is picking up fast, and there are bigger plants of large extent are coming up. But if we ignore megadam, if we believe that it is not going to come, in that case solar may exceed renewable energy production in Tibet Autonomous Region. But then the moment we expect 60 gigawatt plant by 2030 or later 2029, then that will definitely exceed all the other sources in Tibet, and that becomes a predominant source of renewable energy in Tibet Autonomous Region. Then it will be like hydro, solar, wind, geothermal to an extent, and other forms. So this is a map which I've used in 2023. You can say it's a bit outdated because we are 2 years down the line or 3 years from the data source period. You can see the lot of clusters exist in other parts of China. I have not kept much on this part of Tibet Autonomous Region because we don't have much plans over there also. But what you can see here is the cluster of tapping is here. It is hydro, it is solar, and a bit of wind and geothermal. All are planned in these regions, right? So now, going forward, the idea is to leverage the energy available in this plateau and then use it for the development around it. That is what initially conveyed to larger people, especially the local people, that the energy being tapped here would be used for the development around this region. But then now we can see it is being exported to other parts of China. And indeed, the transmission lines mega plan is also established to take it over 4,500, 5,000 kilometers away from the actual production point. Uh, so before we dive into the different sources of renewable energy, we need to understand a bit on the geography of it. I'm going to explain it through the 3D maps and from the spatial sense. If you look at this plateau stands out, right? And to make it more Yeah, to make it more interesting, I dropped it in this. I made this 3D to show uh, where is this and how it is different. A closer look of that is this. Look at the topography. Let's say you have Pakistan here. In this side, you have Pakistan, but the kind of topography we both share is almost plains, right? So in that case, there won't be less of there would be less of variation in terms of climate and other factors. Whereas Tibet Plateau, it completely stands out. You can see it as the tall clustered mountains. It's slightly exaggerated for the viewing to enrich the viewing experience, but then it is exaggerated with respect to scale. So don't worry about it. But what is really there is a kind of topography that you are seeing. It's all tall mountains clustered, and you can see the rivers flowing inside. And the valleys that you can see are the generally the one which carries the water, and this is the time when the river enters India and comes into it. I'll show it in subsequent slides. Right, so you can see this yellow spots here. These are the areas where the valleys exist and carries the water, especially the Yarlung Sangpo flows in this area, and then it turns and then it enters India like this. I believe you are seeing my mouse cursor also. Now, what is the best part of it? The best part of it is it has an average elevation over 4,500 meters from the mean sea level, and it possesses a different climatic condition. It consists of over 5 different climatic conditions, microclimatic conditions in that area. And when you look at the number of rivers which originates from there, you could see, these are major rivers of China, which I plotted on a topographic map. It tells the Yarlung Sangpo originates from here. It comes like this, and then it takes a turn towards India and starts flowing towards south. And until then, it is flowing from west to east, right? And the other rivers are also originating in Tibet Autonomous Region. But the interesting fact is this area is highly complex in altitude, right? So that is why the small river, you can say, relative to this other rivers which flows for a very long distance, this rivers spans for a shorter distance in this map relatively, but then it could able to generate a huge hydro potential because of the change in elevation that is observed over 2000 meters in a very short span. So what is the current scenario? The current scenario is close to 7 gigawatt, and what is expected in near term goal in 2025 is basically upgraded to 9, that can be contributed by solar plants and wind and the hydro dams, the smaller ones which are being in construction phase. And then later on in you can say the long term vision, the capacity is expected to rise by all three means: by hydro, solar, and also through the wind energy thing. So by the time this Medong project gets over, it is expected to get growth. This is what documented in published, scientifically published, peer-reviewed articles. The expectation is this, and I just compiled it from the multiple sources. And it can go up to this. The potential is this, but we don't know whether it will go or even it will go beyond this. Depends upon the technical feasibility on this area. So this is about Tibet Autonomous Region in the present form and where it is planning to reach in, let's say, 20 to 25 years from now. But what about the solar potential? I'll go with potentials one by one now, and then we'll go for discussion. Uh, this place as class 1 solar resource because we classify, when it comes to solar potential, we classify it based on the abundance of solar energy exists in that region. So this has class 1 solar resource in the Tibet Autonomous Region, which ranges from 5852 to 8400 megajoules per meter square. In a small area, you can get this much of energy, which means a longer sunshine and stronger sunshine that exists in this region. And a city like Lhasa itself can get this much of quantum of energy in this area with the capable developments in solar photovoltaic cells, storage techniques, and establishing grids. China has leveraged the solar potential in a better way in last, let's say, 4 5 years. And there's massive plans. There was a time, when we look at the distribution of spatial distribution of this plants, solar plants, let's say 5 years ago, there are a lot of small plants which are coming, let's say 10 megawatt and so on. But in recent times, you can see anything, every plant which comes up at least 100 megawatts and so on. It's much, much bigger in scale. It may not be a bigger scale compared to what we see in plains, because here it is on a undulated terrain. It's quite difficult to establish a solar plant, and that too in a harsh weather. How one can establish to harvest it toward the year when there are multiple other challenges emerges in this area. you know Extreme high level of UV radiation is good, but it is not good for the solar panels also. So they try to overcome a lot of challenges in this area. So this is from my published article in Geospatial Bulletin. So I've calculated, the month-wise variation, the abundance and month-wise variation in this region. This is the cumulative value. So which means, for the entire Tibet Autonomous Region, not specific for particular regions. It's an averaged value of that region. It shows the months like, April, May, June, July are the ideal period where you can get maximum potential and sunshine in that area. This map and subsequent map will be very interesting because we have calculated based on image processing to figure out the solar irradiance, the abundance in this particular area. But this is the kind of solar sunshine or the abundance of solar energy available in this area. But the harvesting of this, converting that into an actual electricity, depends on the technology and the number of plants exist in this area. But what is to be noted between this and the subsequent one, this one is in June and this one is in December. If you look at a difference in terms of color, you could see the maximum value comes on this part, right? You can say the central and western part of it, where the other parts, the central and southern part, gets a stable, you can say an average value in the middle. But if you look at December in the winter period, you still get a higher value in this area. But then, um, in terms of numerical values, the central and southern portion still carries, and then this part, the eastern, somewhere closer to the eastern portion, these areas gets the better solar irradiance throughout the year, because of which this hypothesis which I'm putting up is being validated based on the existing plans. When we plot the existing solar projects in this region, we could able to see those things are available largely on a cluster in these areas, right? This is based on a external source. What we also try to validate is like, well, is it possible to map by ourselves? We use the techniques, especially we use image processing techniques to figure out where are the solar plants exist. So this is the number of plants we could see and its cluster. But then it's slightly over exaggerated here, because the the technique I have used is not categorizing. Let's say there is a five different segments in a particular plant area, and it is named as, let's say, some X solar plant, but it counted as five rather than counting it as one unit because it is named as a one complex. Nevertheless, it indicates where that complexes exist and what is the proximity to the line of control, sorry, line of actual control, and other areas. So if you look at this, the number of plants are coming here, and indeed the maximum energy capacity is also installed in these areas. Now I'll take you through few examples, right? What we have studied in our geospatial bulletin, we looked at few places where the solar panels are deployed massively in, let's say, in last 5 years. This is from Shigatse Peace Airport. Initially in 2020, you could see the solar plants are not much, and then in 2021 it has started, and slowly it is on the increasing side, and you could see massive plants coming here, and these are also solar plants. These are also solar plants, and you could see multiple things. It start powering the railway station which is here. There's a railway station which is established here. It start powering it, and then it also supports other infrastructure facilities closer to this dual purpose airport. It's not just that. We have noticed it is the solar plants are being deployed in remote areas where it can power a remote post. That is a very small quantum. However, it enables somebody to place a resource in an area where uh, the current grid could not support or transmit electricity to that area. And this I have taken as another example for two reasons. One is this is how the cities are started leveraging renewable energy, especially the solar ones. And you could see there's a new development called this kind of pits. These are thermal storage pits which have come up in along with the recently established solar plants. The reason for this is this can store the thermal energy to manage the seasonal and daily variations also. And traditionally places like this, especially valleys like this, carries a lot of snow, and this permafrost condition restricts the placement of solar. But then the solar panels are kept in this area, and there are certain technologies which are there to to minimize the snow cover, to melt out the snow and then avoid building snow in these areas. So these are all certain things which are coming up, and this is a proof where we could able to locate the massive solar plant right next to the military facility over there, and people are leveraging it. And you could see there's a lot of storage pits here, the kind of things which I have shown. So what we are seeing as a blueprint in recently established solar panels are, you could see a huge solar panel and then the facility to maintain it in between, and then there's a grid station over there. And this white color thing that you are seeing are the battery storage facilities that is coming along with all the new facilities. This again, I've said the storage markings. You can see it in other plant in Kamba County, but this is coming as a proper blueprint in recently established bigger plants. So you will have all the components in the newly established things. That reminds us few things. It is not just electricity generated, leveraged in that vicinity. It is something where people can store, people can transport and connect it to the nearest grids also. I'm studying the grid connections. Probably in a week's time, you will get an article which talks about the grid network and density and other factors associated with this renewable energy in Geospatial Bulletin. But what we can say is, like, now it is not an solar energy is not harvested wherever there is a development happen. For example, in this case, you could see there's a town next to it. The solar energy is harvested, which possibly can power the town. Whereas in this area in Chumchum Valley, you could see there's when I search for towns around it, there's no need for such a big plant in this area. You don't find much of settlements around it. But then it is closer to a grid, and when we dive deep into literature, we could figure out this energy could be leveraged for transporting to other places, and projects like this in remote areas can be leveraged for further infrastructure projects, highway buildings, and other forms of utilizations. And that is why we could see the plants all around. So the idea of establishing solar and wind farms here is tap the renewable energy wherever it is available, and just they're trying to see its feasibility to connect it to the grids, and rest can be taken care, because otherwise in traditional form we can expect these kinds of plants in a place where habitation exists. In Pangong, we know that a kind of radar station over there is being powered by solar plants. At least it helps to support a part of it. It's not just this area, in many remote areas, and we could see this trend in newly established villages along the borders. Over there also, in the absence of electricity grid, the solar panels are being deployed. Just to find a correlation, spatial correlation between these two, we have used hotspot analysis between the military locations versus the solar plants. We could see both the dots and the density both falls almost similar in many places. So what it indicates, there is a coincidence, let's presume as coincidence at this stage, that the military and solar plants locations are in proximity in many places. But I strongly believe there is a relation and there is an intentional effort to leverage the potential closer to the military sites. This is about solar potential. I'll quickly move on to hydro and other aspects. Hydro has become a talking point when this Medong Dam was, that there's a proper announcement of this dam happened few years ago in 2023, and then there are certain subsequent steps which are carried out, and now we had this groundbreaking ceremony a month or two ago, right? So until that, we were not bothered about this renewable energy harvesting aspects in Tibet Autonomous Region. But this dam is not just a renewable energy project; it can actually hamper the downstream lower riparian state. So for us, it is a problem because of the river's transboundary nature. The important thing, as I said earlier, about this river, which has a 2000-meter drop, which eventually China is trying to leverage to create the mega dam on top of this. And this is not going to be a reservoir kind of dam that we can see it in Three Gorges Dam. This is going to be a run of a river, possibly tunneled, from before Namcha Bawa, and then allowing water to divert on the other side, and that is again diverting towards the Indian side, but then just cutting across some portion of this natural course of river, and then uh, building it through multiple cascading dams. So, but then it comes with a problem. It is being planned in an area where seismic hazards are high, landslides are high, glacier outbursts exist in the previous area, I mean, on the origin. And it prevents natural, it impacts the natural flow, and sediments will get affected, and many other indirect impacts do exist. The most important concern for us is the grids which are being planned and which are likely to complete by 2029, so that the energy generated here will be transported to other place. Why I'm saying is as a most important concern, because there are few arguments being regularly made by experts amongst us. So one argument is like, what is China going to do with this kind of energy here? They're not able to transport it to other areas. The answer is, yeah, they can transport it, and there is a plan to do it, right? Far away from there. And then there's a tweet this morning about saying like how China is powering Beijing, where the electricity generated at one end can power in, thousands of millions of houses on the other side of the country in a different time zone. So that is being taken care. And the second thing is, people always talks about this, the precipitation, the quantum of rainfall that we get in this area. People argues the rainfall they get before this U junction, the U point, is lesser, so that there won't be that much of water in this entire stream. But the simple thing to understand here is, yes, the intensity of rainfall is higher here, but then we need to see the larger catchment here and the distance it carries. It definitely brings some water. And then we're not talking about water. We are talking about the basic physics behind it, the mass and acceleration it can produce, especially when it descends from 2000 meters. So that is what a bigger concern, that you can see it here. The river gets a steeper slope all along the river, but then suddenly it has a very steep slope, and then it comes to the deepest canyon in the world, and then it enters India. So, this cutting across the river likely to happen here. So, what is the importance? So, in our case, it will be the impact on the flow. And even though it is a run of a river, they're likely to build a small dam or a small reservoir over there. That will have impact on the downstream. What works on the favor of Tibet, or let's say China in this case? you could see the number of white dots. This is a geospatial analysis to see where the river bodies with high slope and high elevation exist. That helps them to get this force, right? The better gradient of water flow. You could see a lot of areas it is dot because these are the core valleys where the river flows before Lhasa. The the lower slope and lower elevation exist on Indian side, but then look at these areas. It has a higher elevation or higher slope, so all the contributing rivers, which gives the gradient to move the water at a high speed. So that is why they are confident to produce energy. You could see all these water bodies here, but then here those are having higher slopes but not elevation, whereas here just before it turns in the U-turn, you get a lot of higher elevation also. With the moment you know that when it comes from a higher gradient, and we also get decent rainfall in this area, so then the water generally carries its own speed, right, and velocity. So that naturally gives them the advantage. And uh, Yarlung Sangpo is not simple. It passes through 5 microclimatic conditions. Some places it is contributed by glacier. Some places it is, in this area it is heavy monsoon rain, and in other places it is quite dry and cold. So there are multiple things we need to study and to understand the contribution from various contributing tributaries to this. Then only we could able to see its actual impact or not. So that is my submission at hydro. Then it comes to wind. Uh, I'm not going to address much on the geothermal because there is only one functional plant of geothermal that been there for a long time, and the only challenge due to the geothermal is the kind of seismic hazard it can possibly create around its vicinity. By looking at the feasibility of geothermal, yes, they do have plenty of opportunities all along the Tibet, but at this moment it is not tapped at higher scale. And there are certain learnings for India also that I'll cover in the last stage. But geothermal is again a tricky thing that is not popular at this moment at this area, but I doubt it may be used in a better way in future. So when it comes to wind potential again, there are basic challenges in harvesting wind in this area because of deploying turbines, which are just little difficult to run at as harsh conditions. But they overcome recently. Indeed, it has been portrayed as world records installations over 100 megawatt in few places where it's extremely high, over 5,000 meters of altitude. So they're progressing in this. Indeed, I've read on the other day, it says thousands of kilometers they have transported the blades of the windmill, especially in this mountainous terrain. If you're manufacturing somewhere far in the city and then transporting it all along the complex road, the road infrastructure needs to be good, and it is being transported and deployed, and it start functioning. So, that wind energy is again likely to scale up. Right now, it is, let's say, 150 to 200 megawatts that can go easily up to 300 to 400 megawatts in next few years. That is what they have planned in multiple projects. As I said earlier, while all these are there, there's something what I have noticed is there is a place where hydro is tapped at the vicinity. If there is a solar energy available, that is also tapped, and then they are collectively made that area as a local renewable energy hub. Thereafter it can transport it through the grids. Now, it is not just a project of where the requirement exists. It is more of a project of tapping whatever possible from wherever it exists. So these are the developments. This is one project I have put out in an opinion piece, but there are many projects where they're planning to transport from one part of the country to other parts. You could see already 99% of Tibet's energy is taken care by the renewables, and they already started exporting in last few years to other parts of the country. So this is generally there. I'd like to stick on time. I'll finish with this slide. What is our primary concern in terms of renewable energy harvesting happening in Tibet? Our primary concern is Brahmaputra, because the other things, solar, wind, and geothermal, may not have a direct impact. Mostly, I would say that gives us a learning. Whereas these things, the Brahmaputra and Yarlung Sangpo mega project is something where we find our concern. Second thing, the indirect concern I would say is energy security given to PLS infrastructure along the frontier, which can power the bases all the time, which can power the sensors which are kept in remote locations, and for the necessary logistics, these powers can be used. And energy export from Tibet Autonomous Region to other part, instead of leveraging it for that development around that area, it tried to contribute to this global energy, its mission to get 2060 net neutrality target. So that will also be a concern. And there's an interesting fact on how the other forms of energy, let's say other than hydro, how the solar, wind, and other things can do have indirect impacts, because for say the solar can change a variation on the ground. We know that when a surface characteristics is changed, for say if an albedo value of a surface is changed, it do create indirect impact on the overall weather and climate of that region. So that may have impact on the area adjacent to this development. So we could see massive buildings of solar plants are coming up. Definitely it will have indirect impact, because the overall natural energy balance equation in that area is getting changed. That will create impact on us. And the transboundary challenges, environment and human settlements, when this energy provides an access to people to settle all along the border or somewhere closer to the border to manage extreme conditions, that still is concern for us. And also militarization in this, it's feasible because we are sorting out food, we are sorting out shelter, they have sorted out electricity. So those are the concerns for us. When it comes to reaction, I think the non-hydro renewables are where we need to look at and adapt the technology. We need to understand the phases that they have gone through. I try to document few in my Geospatial bulletin. Feel free to read it whenever you find time. It's available online. So the journeys are whatever people says as a challenge or whatever exists as a challenge, Tibet and China has overcome over a period of time, and those challenges are minimized. It's not completely, removed, but it is minimized. So we need to take and we need to use that. We need to use it in a different way. Maybe utilizing solar energy at urban spaces in a better way. Utilizing in similar areas like in Leh and other areas. Those are the things we need to look at. And probably we also need to leverage his potentials for our 2017 net zero target. So that is something where we are not talking much vibrantly, but China has been doing it and saying that they're going ahead of time. So this is my submission about Tibet Autonomous Region. And thank you for this opportunity. I'd be happy to take any questions as suggestions from the chair also. So these are some of our works. You can find out the bulletin which is there, and our works, even including op-eds, are published in this area, and you can follow us on social media on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nityananda, for a wonderful presentation and for giving us for mapping what exactly is China doing in terms of renewable energy, transmission, generation in Tibet, especially, which is an area of concern for us, India, especially. And it's really heartening to know that something is happening to counter the climate change impacts. Because yesterday only we heard how Trump has dubbed the entire climate change as a on job, and by and net zero by 2060, China, I think, is on its way. One question that obviously comes to my mind is China is sort of emerged as a pioneer in this developing this kinds of renewable energy technologies. Is there any other, if you've been reading much on this in other journals also, in otherwise, is there any foreign involvement in Chinese development of these technologies?
Oh, what, especially in terms of wind energy development, they say wherever the technological challenges are, some technology transfer has happened because the European countries are good at harvesting wind energy, especially offshore wind farms. So those things have been adapted to make it happen. But then there's definitely a good amount of R&D happened at their end to see its feasibility for these extreme conditions, because the technology can be adapted, but deploying it at harsh conditions gives them a different challenge. I'm sure they worked on this with multiple things, because the kind of solar panels per se, the traditional solar panels are there, but then these panels, what they have deployed in recent times, they're going with an innovative ways. Very few people has, and also the thermal storage pit. We could see only in other place. There is a place in Europe. I could not remember that. That's the only place I could see a thermal storage pit being used. So other than that, it's being used in Tibet. So other than that, they also go with the reflective based solar harvesting, where the mirrors are kept in the middle and which can reflect the solar potential, solar energy, and then increase its potential. So all these innovative stuffs are being planned and deployed on the ground. So
Okay.
definitely there is a lot of learning and technology transfer happening, but not much is deliberated on what kind of things are there on the ground and what was the source for it. It's mostly called as innovation from the in-house.
And is there any evidence you see of the Chinese developing a kind of a security cover to protect these things? Because obviously it is in a disputed or hostile region, basically, that they're building this kind of an infrastructure, energy infrastructure.
Yeah.
So, do you see any evidence of any?
So the bigger infrastructures are not there in the disputed zones or the disputed zones between India and China per se. But the massive production on a place where it is not required itself indicating why somebody is harvesting by investing so much money in this area. Because there is no need for development in this area, habitations are less, and local people are not going to utilize the entire energy that they are generating there. Maybe uh, the interest is to build and support logistics network where they can use this energy for operations and for deployments also of forces at complex areas.
Okay, thank you. The house is open for question and questions. So please, I'm sure you can, in the chat, you can ask your questions. Your questions will be announced and professor will reply to them. So this is of course a question, political question. Any evidence have you found during your studies that how are Tibetans reacting to this, developments?
No,
And
it's very clear from multiple literatures. People raise their voice against it, and I mean, it benefit them to an extent. But I don't think they are happy with these large-scale projects. That is what I could sense, because these large-scale projects, be it hydro, be it solar, or the other forms, generally impacts the local environmental conditions also. So, for example, if you leave a surface where the sunlight hits and it goes back, that's a different scenario compared to a place where you cover it and restrict the sun falls on the surface. So that has a local microclimatic variations, in that. So that's just something like people are not happy. Definitely, people are not happy about it. That we can sense it from multiple articles around.
so the railway network which China has built in Tibet now, is that being run fed by from solar energy basically?
It's run by electricity, I guess, but possibly the source of that comes with the grid. I would I'll come back in a week's time and share the published article on this, on how the electricity grid network spans in Tibet.
Okay.
So what people think, possibly the grids are sparse, there's not connecting. The facts are different. It connects extensively on different parts, and that is why what you are rightly pointed out. We need to see this as a nexus between the thing, not just as one thing. So when we see it a nexus of development, infrastructure, urbanization, and military settlements and the energy tapping, so then we could able to figure out a picture. That is what we are trying to do it in the last 2 years in this geospatial bulletin, extensively covering Tibet.
To get a full picture of.
Yeah, the full picture is still not visible unless we try to fill each of the gaps in many of the things. So climate is one of a gap which I'm again trying to understand
Okay.
what role climate plays in supporting this development and creating challenges for this development, because we are predicting the downstream impact or the impact to India just by given a scenario as usual, that is the climate business as usual. But then if it aggravates and if there is change that we can see, we are already seeing changes in monsoon and larger part of our country, so then this can create an adverse effect. So we are not studying it, and we don't know why it happens mostly, but then when you see it in excess, maybe we can find answer a bit on this.
But in Tibet region, are you seeing some kind of climate change? Matlab,
I
is,
The
is
literature
it?
says that temperature is on the rising side, but the temperature generally won't rise due to climate change in terms of 5%, 4 degree, 5 degrees. It's a very minute change, but then that's a significant change that can create impact on the reality. So that's still there. So possibly when we'll put out the exact facts on the ground also.
I think we have some questions.
Yes.
There is one question. No, we don't have at the moment. I see, Rapai, would you like to ask some question?
Yeah, thank you, Bharadwaj.
Okay.
Thank you, Nityanandam, because
Thank you.
you see, I wanted to type it out, but I thought it was somehow getting long, so I didn't do that. Thank you for your presentation. I have two sets of clarifications. I know that you have done a brilliant work. One is the hydel power area, because I remember traveling through from Chongqing to Wuhan along the river when the Three Gorges project was just breaking up. They were starting that project.
Right.
But that was a good experience. But of course, this is nothing to do with the Three Gorges. But the China's river projects, even though our press, what we get, I won't get into that area. But you also pointed out that it is a run of the river project they are planning on the Brahmaputra. That is one thing. But the second thing, even if they build the dams or they want to try to stop the water, how big you expect? That is one question. And the second thing, the interesting thing about the wind energy, if you travel, for example, in Sweden, near to Copenhagen,
Yeah.
and all that places, some of the fans, I don't know what you call that high mass wind energy, that sources. You think that there are some collaboration, and how much copying the China is doing, or how much trade they have? In the solar panel, we know that that there was, I think 1 or 2 years back, there was joking report that solar panels I can go for building a fencing. It is easier to buy solar panel and fence my garden rather than putting a wire fence or something like that, because it has become so cheap. So I would like to get how the technology absorption and scaling up they are doing in these areas. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your interesting question. I'll answer one by one. I think the first question I presumed, what would be the size of the reservoir if they are even building a run of a river? As you also pointed out, we have nothing to compare. To be honest, when I looked at it first time in 2022, I compared it to the scale of Three Gorges just with the capacity. Later, working on that after a year, I realized uh, the project is completely different. We don't have any inference to take from the Three Gorges Dam. But what literature says on this, the current dam, they have tested the blueprint of it. In a way, they built a smaller dam on the same lines that I'll be putting out in my next edition. And also answered many of our queries, like the earthquake proof and all those things. And it also says, despite it is a river runoff runoff project, it still need to have a small reservoir. So that reservoir is likely to come before the U-bend, as they are trying to divert it at that place only. But what exact size of that is not known to me. But maybe I'll see once the land clearing process starts, I could able to answer. But the interesting fact here is, when I looked at for the next edition, I realized they don't have to do much of things here, because when the river is going through a deepest canyon, and in that place, there is no necessity to build a massive dam for that, because that itself give them the actual storage. In the other places where they have constructed, the same thing happened. So there is a clearance happened on the sides of the canyon, a bit of extension and strengthening things happened, and thereafter that acts as a natural storage for that area. Maybe some of that can happen here. We can able to say exactly when the visible things are there. After all, I'm writing it from space-based observation and other forms of geointelligence, not through ground survey and field. That is
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, Nityanandam, just a supplement to this, because I don't know much about wind, so I'm just, I read somewhere long back, for example, in our Arunachal Pradesh,
Right.
if there are places you have to take, very the power building capacity. If you put a this thing, you can just start producing electricity, hydropower in the some of the existing nalas or things like
Right.
that. But I don't know why we have this fascination for larger dams or bigger dams. And I
Yeah.
think in a place like Arunachal Pradesh, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But I think the point that now China has done the gridding, that the power supplies they can take to anywhere from one place to other.
Right.
If you travel in anywhere in China, it is visible now. Yeah, thanks. I will not disturb you anymore.
So no, you made a right and interesting point. What we can see in we can leverage and utilize those runoff river projects, and the Medang project is slightly different because the topography is also different. And when it comes to Arunachal, the land side accessibility is quite high compared to the upstream area. However, they get a leverage because of the deepest canyon, where there's no harm in putting up run of a river projects which are small in scale in the lower regions within India. That is one. Regarding the wind that you have asked, my answer over here is yes, I've seen those bigger offshore wind plants, especially the windmills on ocean and so on. But I really don't know the similarity between these two projects. That maybe I need to dive deeper, because I've never thought of that aspects. What we are seeing is the kind of technology being adapted for the blades, and technology being adapted for the turbines. So these two are being adapted from places, and then with engineering efforts thereafter, they put it on right place to tap the best possible available renewable energy at that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nityanandam.
Yeah.
We have some questions on the chat box. The first question is from Om Rajan. He is a research intern at ICS. His question is, in what ways does Tibet's geological profile influence China's long-term green transition plans?
Well, there's a lot of things people are saying what's happening even in Mongolia. It's slightly a difficult terrain compared to this, and the transformation of the deserts into green forest. People says it's happening, but I have not studied that honestly. But the climate change can change the thing, because right now, if you leave the situation as it is, or if I assume business as usual, then there won't be much change in this innovation. Given the China's transformation that they have made in other places, I'm sure they will come for it if there is a potential feasibility. And I believe the climate is also slightly getting changed over that area. We could see some variations in these regions. If that happens, there's a new form of life, new form of surface covers can come. So, but then I'm not sure. This is a complex thing where it requires a multiple understanding to answer it better. But what I could say is, if there is a necessity, I'm sure there will. But there, at this moment, I don't see any necessity to densely occupy different parts of Tibet.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Anne Eliza Varugis. She is a research intern at ICS. Her question is, in case of India's renewable energy potential versus the realization of it are quite different from China, especially in terms of population density, where China has more available stretches of land for such grid systems available, whereas India is of course more compacted in terms of population density. How can India go about emulating the Chinese trajectory for producing a comparable level of energy output given such challenges?
See, firstly, I don't agree that we have to compete or match the Chinese production, because well, that is the ultimate goal is to get this usage of other forms of energy generation sources, and to go with the renewable energy sources. So then, if that is in your mind, and then you will figure out the possible sources for tapping it, given your own resources, including the space, the technological merits, and all the things that we have within our country. But if the goal is to compete with someone, then it's a different case. Here, I would argue maybe we need to look at our requirements in 2070 and how we can minimize the usage of this other forms of fuels that can impact us. So we need to look at the renewable source of electricity generation, for which we need to look for technological advancement. That is why I'm saying the R&D has to be done to see, even in dense urban area, how we can tap it, right? How we can minimize the energy consumption. That is something where we need to invest, rather than looking at the scale. We don't have to worry on the developments on this thing. Yes, we don't have much of things to do also. It is not in our hands. We can only watch in these things, and rather we can take this as a motivation to scale it up and to at least reach it by 2070 as we promised.
Thank you, sir. The third question is from Briju Banerjee, who is again a research intern. His question is, how do you think India compares to Chinese capabilities for power transmission from these renewable sources over long distances, specifically with regard to HVDC transmission?
I haven't studied what we are currently utilizing, because my focus area is generally outside the country. I didn't compare it with what we have, or whether we have any plans to transfer also. That I'm not sure. I'm sorry. But then it's an interesting question. Maybe we should consider it. If we have a potential far away, as you said, land is an issue in some cases, then we should harvest it in an area where land is available and then transport it to the longest possible area through this advance in technology and transmission. Because transmission is a critical thing. People says, let's say 50-60% generally losses when they're transmitted in a classical way of transporting electricity. But these lines are helping people to minimize the transmission loss, and to transport it through rugged mountains, transport it through different form of weather conditions. So all those complexity adds, but still they're going for an ambitious project to transport it, let's say powering Hong Kong and powering the other part of the country.
Thank you, Dr. Nityanandam. Dr. Bharadwaj, do you have any further comments?
No, do you
Or
have some more questions? Do you have?
no, that is it.
Okay, so I'll like to ask one question is that,
Please.
Professor Nityanandam, you mentioned about, learning from China. So how do you think we can learn? Are students going there in the universities specifically to learn about renewable energy generation, transmissions, and what are the ways that you would suggest that we could learn from them?
So I would suggest, addressing the problem first. So they have mapped out the problems and then trying to work out whether the technology available inside, or they're transferring it. They fundamentally map the problems, the kind of literature which are being published, the scientific papers, especially few sponsored from Chinese Academy of Sciences. Those clearly says the problems are identified, documented, and given to R&D units, and then people worked on it, which was supported by government funding also. I think that is something where we can take it as a learning, um, to motivate and encourage people to work and address our limitations. That is what I'm calling it as a taking motivation from them, not adapting technology in a sense. If there is a technology that is also required for us, per se, tapping the renewable energy potential in Leh. For say, if you need to look at it, I'm sure our people are also working, our institutions are also working. If there's a better technology where we can readily adapt, we should leverage it and work it finer to extract further. And for example, the geothermal energy, even in our areas adjacent to this high altitude areas, it is being tapped for household consumption. But then, can this be scaled? The scalability of those projects need to be looked at, because that is also a renewable source without much of challenges. But then, uh, can we map the comprehensive potential exist in these areas before thinking of tapping it and working out the cost benefit analysis to leveraging it, extracting it, and transporting it to other areas? So we can't simply again rule out an renewable energy plant just by looking at a direct cost that exists today because of lack of technology in a particular country, in a region. So maybe we need to overcome those minor challenges and then address. That is what I say as a takeaway. But then the technological learning can come from the at least half a story is being said in this peer reviewed papers, not the full story, but there's something to start with at least, rather than only going for at times the news article. So there's always a better chance to find more information in peer reviewed articles.
Any other questions?
Can I come in, Bharadwaj, for a second?
Please, please.
Yeah, Nityanandam, only one question. When you talked
Please.
about the resources, I don't know, Takshashila University, where you are resourcing and how you are utilizing the Chinese language resources. For example, if we can get the China Academy of Sciences papers in the area of energy resources, I think now it is possible to get it translated, but of course it needs a lot of money, and the scientific translation is not going to come free. So somebody have to fund it, and and even the people who can do it also not freely available. So have you seen or have you looked at the papers in the energy area which is coming from Chinese institute, especially China Academy of Social Sciences, or the universities like
No, I referred the
Shanghai or
papers,
some.
but referred the papers which are published in English and in global peer-reviewed, and renowned publications. That itself has given me some indicator to search, because most of my inferences come from what I could sense it or quantity, make a quantitative analysis out of the data sets that I can get. But the good amount of literature review and the information related to what I wanted comes from the published articles, which are not coming directly from Chinese Academy of Sciences. Perhaps one can look at the projects funded by Chinese Academy of Sciences and published in peer-reviewed papers.
I think there is enough material coming out of China
Yeah.
Academy of Sciences and some of the leading universities, technical
Yeah,
universities.
sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I'll just close this with one question, at least last question, of course.
Please.
Does anyone else have any question? Okay, no. So my last question is that do the Chinese the data gathered by the Chinese satellites, is that data available in the open domain, or is it available for sale also?
I don't think it's available in open domain and for sale in India, at least through civilian channel. I'm not sure about the other channels, but the access is always restricted. Probably some Chinese private companies do sell satellite data sets, but I'm not sure whether
Have
it's
such
available in
private,
a.
do they have such private companies like in the West that we can?
No, I have not engaged with any of them in the past, so I'm not aware. Neither I've searched for it, but I'm sure there must be options that it can be leveraged through overseas countries.
Thank you, Professor Nityanandan. It
Thank
was
you,
a
Atiji.
wonderful presentation, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. We learned from it, and we've had a very different perspective. And thank you so much for coming to ICS virtually,
Thank
of
you.
course. And may I request all the participants to give him a virtual round of applause for a wonderful,
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, and thanks to Professor Alka Acharya and other members in ICS for this opportunity. And thanks to you for hosting, Atulji and Avni and the other person who introduced. Thank you.
This is a good learning experience. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you. With this, we come to an end to today's seminar. We thank Dr. Nityanandam and Dr. Bharadwaj for gracing today's seminar with their presence and for giving us their precious time. We also thank the audience for joining us today. We would like to invite you all to the upcoming Wednesday seminar. Further information regarding the event can be found at the ICS website. You may also subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.